Hi folks, welcome to another episode of My Life with Robert Burns. Jim Thompson and Douglas Mackenzie here again to chat to another of our cronies from around the Burns world. How are you doing, Jim?
Doing great, Douglas. Lovely autumnal evening here in Kilmarnock for a wee change.
Oh, very good. Well, it's been raining all day where I've been, but there's been a wee bit of sunshine, so not too bad. Well, folks, tonight's guest is the immediate past president of Irvine Burns Club, and hopefully we'll get him to talk a bit about Irvine Burns Club later on. Cronies everywhere, please welcome Iain McPhail.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Douglas.
Hi, Iain. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Yep. Okay.
Good, good, good. Iain, the way we start these podcasts is always the same. We ask you the question, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Aye, no problem. I was born and bred in Dunwellington. I was born in 1857 in Dunwellington and attended Dunwellington Primary School and then Dunwellington High School the days before Doon Academy. And very pleasant upbringing in a mining village, which these villages at the time had their own economies, basically. We had everything we needed, except maybe an optician. I think my father said all the time he had to go to Ayr was to go to opticians, everything else you could get in the town. And it's that was true right up to the 70s, of course. But like most of the guys of my age, when I left school, I joined the pits, firstly in Pennyvenie, where I served, I was 4 years an apprentice engineer in Pennyvenie, and then moved when Pennyvenie shut, unfortunately, in 1978, moved to the Killach, where it was a bit more mechanical and a bit more highfalutin, and I'm afraid the engineering side wasn't for me. It was, I wouldn't say, I didn't have a bent for it, I didn't have a great love for engineering, so I sort of defected, if you like, to the mining side, and I worked there until 1986, and for a lot of the time, I was in what they called the ham and egg shift. I'm sure you'll have heard of the ham and egg shift. It was, well, a lot of you come that boys, actually. We worked a kind of split shift between the day shift and the back shift. So we would start about 10 o'clock and finish at 5. And basically what we did was a lot of the shifting and moving between the shifts and also a lot of the illegal work, which couldn't be done during the day. So we'd have squads of 4 or 5. We'd have a deputy, an electrician, an engineer, and probably a beltman, all in the same squads. So I did that until 1986, and then when the pits were closing, I thought it was time for a career change. What could you do? I've no real trade or anything, and I saw an advert in the paper for the Minister of Defence Police, and I thought, well, this can't be that hard. This must be all right. I'll try it, and luckily enough, I was successful to get into the MOD police. But I think it was due to, at the time, there were a lot of ex-miners getting in. I know a lot of guys who got in at the same time. And I'm thinking this is probably mainly due to a superintendent in recruitment called Jimmy Goldie, who himself was an ex-miner. And he spent more time in my interview comparing the power loading mining to the mining of his day. And I think they would see soft spot for me and a lot of the guys, and we got in the MOD police, and I moved up to Beith, where I lived and served in Beith for 26 years. Right. 26 good years, I must say. It was good to me. And then I moved to Irvine in the late 90s. I worked there until I was 54, and it was going to be, no saying a bit much for me, but if Jim can maybe understand you, at that age, you're getting armed every day.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not a thing that we ever seen very often. And here's every day in life you're getting armed up in an army in the morning, you're carrying about all day in a full shift. And the tactics and everything was getting harder the older you go, you had to be quicker and timed. I'm thinking, here, maybe it's time I maybe get out of here. Before I get caught, I'd not been very good at it. And then these packages come along, and lo and behold, I took the package and I retired at 54, thinking, that's fine, that's me by. But at 54, your mindset isn't it, not to work. So for the next 12 years, I worked for my daughter in Kilmarnock. She's got a shop called Flowers by Karen.
All right, okay.
A florist in Kilmarnock, and I done deliveries there for another 12 years till I was 66. So bang, went to retire at 54. I actually retired at 66. And I cut my hours down accordingly as time went on.
Aye. No, you're absolutely right. I retired at that age as well, and but you still got an energy to do all sorts of stuff
That's right.
when you retire. So it's I found that a great opportunity to do things that I'd never thought of doing before. But anyway, what was school like in Dunmelliton?
School was good. I was more into sports. I'm really into football. I love football everywhere as well. I played Iain district as well in the select teams. We didn't. We were the first people that weren't allowed to leave at 15.
Mm-hmm.
So we were a class called 5C. That was a class in police, sir, 5C. So we were guys who were leaving in the Christmas because we weren't aged to leave in the July. We had to wait another, like, from the August till December before we could leave, and that coincided with one of the intakes for the coal board. But so that was you just couldn't leave. You weren't studying anything. You were just there. You were probably in the road.
Aye.
All right. I left with the O levels I needed to get what I needed.
Aye.
And
Did you have a favourite subject?
I don't see. I probably like history now, looking into history, but I didn't then. I don't think I had really. I think probably at one time arithmetic, and which I loved arithmetic and working with numbers and all the rest of it. But strangely enough, now if I try to do anything kind of arithmetically, I seem to get a kind of blockage. I kind of numerical dyslexia or something. So I can't do it as I could do it years ago.
Aye. I think over time people just use calculators, and you can lose the habit of doing mental arithmetic. Yeah. So
aye.
So come back to that point when you left school at 15 and a half, 16. What happened then?
Well, I was married at 16 as well, and a dad at 16.
Oh, wow.
So I was walking to the pit at 16 from Burton. We got a house in 44 Burton Cottages, the Miners' Rows. We get, I think we're only the second tenant in it after the McPhail's family who've been in it since 1924, and we went in it in 1974 in October, and we lived there for 4 years in the Miners' Rows. I can remember, I think it was about, it was after decimal, it was about 50 pence a week for your rent or something. And then another kid, Boer Karen was coming on the way, so we moved from Burton up to Bellsbank in Dunmelliton. We lived there until we left there and moved away to Bees.
Aye.
It's quite a haul for the kids, you know, at that age. They're going to one was in primary 7 and had to adapt, another in primary 4. So they had to adapt moving school. I felt a bit sorry for them, but the work was drying up down by, so we had to go somewhere. Aye.
That must have been quite a responsibility, quite an awakening, you know, getting married at 16 and having a family.
Aye, I mean, I wanted to do what everybody else done.
Aye.
But I couldn't go out and play and then just go back home at night. You know, it was a bit different. So I suppose I maybe lost a wee bit of youth through it. But well, what happens, you know. And
aye.
And thankfully, my two daughters are very. Well, one was 16, was born. Another was. I was 16 when she was born. Another about 20, and they're both very successful business ladies. So.
That's tremendous. Right. Yeah, big ticks. So you got to the stage of retiring and you decided that you were good. I think on Facebook, I'm guessing that you jokingly refer to yourself as logistics manager.
Yeah, that's right. That would be a driver. That's right. But basically, it was still at the busy time. See what we call the peaks, which I still go in and drive at Mother's Day, Valentine's, and Christmas. And I do all the routes for the drivers, because at that time I maybe got 4 or 5 drivers on with 2 vans and hiring vans.
Yeah.
So you can't have them all crossing over each other. So we've got areas round about Kilmarnock, we have the Evran Valley, and then we'll have got from Fenny to Stewarton to Simon, Dundonald to Prestwick, then the areas of Kilmarnock, the Caprington area and Belfield, the town centre itself, and New Farm on Thanks South Craigs. So I'll basically put these all into runs in early in the morning, print them out, and the drivers have got runs, so they're no running about all over the place. And still, I've got them on my phone, so every day I look at it. Every day I look at the runs, and I'm making it right. Unpaid work, but it's about 2 minutes. But my wife, who had cared for a boy for many, many years, and he died suddenly last Christmas, or Christmas before. And I had retired, and lo and behold, she has stepped into my shoes to do my job. So she works as a driver now for my daughter. Mm. Keeping the family sort of thing.
Good, perfect. So you talked about football and such like as a youth. What about sports and activities now that you're a man of leisure?
Well, I'm a member of 2 golf clubs. I play maybe 2 to 3 times during the week, but I'm an early morning player, so I like it at 7 o'clock and I'm back home for 10 or whatever. In the winter, you kind of get out that early. You're restricted, so you're not out till later on. So it does concertina up a wee bit, so you don't get times just as easy. And I play bowling as well. I bowl at Irvine Winton Bowling Club in Irvine, and then tomorrow the indoor starts in the Gallery in Kilmarnock. So it's never ending. So I'm still pretty sporty and pretty active. Yeah, and I can probably sit and watch any sport, particularly football, cricket. I can watch them all.
Very good. I'm not much a cricket fan, but Jim likes his cricket.
Oh, especially way back in the 70s. That was when I loved the time of boycotting Botham and Richards and Hadley and all these guys. All the great cricketers in the 70s have said to believe that. Glued to the television set and watching the test matches. Excellent.
And you talked about sport. What about any other interests other than Burns?
No, really. I like to go for a beer now and again, of course. I like it, but it's kind of during the day, so I'd like to maybe go for a pint about 3:30 and home for about 5:30, 5:45, that sort of thing. I don't like particularly writing about the streets at night. That's no my scene. I don't mind a beer during the day, watch a wee bit of racing at the telly. I'm not a big gambler, but I quite like to watch the horses and have a wee flitter now and again.
Good.
So at times taken up, and of course, time's taken up an awful lot with the Burns Club as well, especially where we're bicentenary coming up next year, and a lot of work in the museum too. If we could only attract more visitors, it would be fantastic. I think we've had it for many years right now, but it's there for everybody to see, and it really is an eye opener.
I know I've thoroughly enjoyed any visit I've had. It's been tremendous. But anyway, we're getting on to talk about Burns, and that's Jim's job. So I'm going to pass to Jim and get him to talk in more depth with you about your interest in Burns.
Right. Okay. Hi, Jim.
It's simple. It's the same time. It's the same every time. How did you get started with Burns?
Well, I was attending a Burns. I was still working in Breeze at the MOD, and I used to. This guy would make us go to a Burns. I'd been nearly in my 40s to go to a Burns supper, and it was in Dreghorn Bowling Club, and we went to, and I enjoyed it. We went every year, and one year a guy, it was Willie Wallace, I think, had done Tam O'Shanter, and I'm sitting. I see the big guy. Somebody said, "I know a lot of that." I said, "I'm going to learn that." "How do you know that?" I said, "I'd done that in an O level. I can remember doing that at school, Tam O'Shanter." And a lot of the words were coming back to me, like trousers are like poppy spread, he sees the flowers bloom and shit. These words were all in my head. So when I did eventually go and take on the task of learning Tam O'Shanter for the purposes of writing, a lot it was already there. It was just getting it into place. So that's basically that was it. I wanted to recite Tam O'Shanter. That's what I wanted to do, and I did. First time ever, Alan Tippney took me to West Netherton Bowling Club, and I done it in there. And then I started to run a wee Burns supper at Ravenspark Golf Club. In the first couple of years, I would do Tam O'Shanter. And I was, through Alan, through our people, I was able to get quite a few good speakers at it every year. It doesn't run now, but it did in those days. So that's actually what got me into it, Paul, would be Tam O'Shanter. And then it kind of grew arms and legs for there.
So what came after Tam then? Well,
then I decided I would do another couple of I read a poem called The Address to the Unca Gid, and I thought, that's pretty good. That's a good kind of a good bit of meaning in that there. And then I went on to do. Donald Reid had asked me to do a memory. I said, "Well, I've done a memory." So I done an immortal memory. And then it went for there. I learnt 2 or 3 other poems, which sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I like the wee romantic poems. I learnt 2 or 3. And then I finished up doing a toast to the lassies. And I don't mind doing a toast to the lassies in any company, whether it be mixed or whether it be all male. Preferably all male because you can be rather bawdy. But however, you can you adapt to your audience, as you know. And you can do a mixed company as well, which I did in Dundonald last year. You just leave out some of the ruder bits. But I think there's a place for all types of toast to the lassies guys. See the guys that maybe go to bowling clubs or sporting men, working men's clubs, where they want the comedian there. It's got its place, and also it's got its place in the more sedate suppers as well. But if you go to a place like a bowling club and they want it a wee bit bawdy, if they take something away from your buns at all for the meeting, then your speakers have done your job. So I'm actually quite happy doing anything now. But because I was never used to reading anything, my mortal memory, I do off the top of my head. It's not off the top of my head, it's memorised. So it looks as though I'm standing there and I'm just saying it as it comes into me. That's no actually, I've memorised it. God, the only one that could do that was Ken Dodd. Billy Connolly couldn't do it. Kevin Bridges couldn't do it. It was all in their head. They make it up as they went along. So that's the way my memory goes. And with the Toast to the Lassies, I work with wee buzzwords. And I know where to put the stories in, maybe. And then I try to do a wee 2-poem session all the time. One, a romantic poem of short romantic poem, and one of a woman from his imagination, be it Queen Artemisia or be it Mrs. Wassel or the women for the Twa Dogs, somebody for his imagination against some young girl that he's fancied, for want of a better word. And I think the mix works okay. But I've got to watch and no go too long because I do talk, as you're probably finding the new.
Well, to be honest, the more you talk, the less we do, and that makes a better show, I'm going to say. But, I mean, you're obviously involved with the Burns movement now, and how did you get caught on with getting into Burns Club?
Well, that was another thing. I was doing Tam O'Shanter, and I was partly by a guy called Roger Gray. I used to golf with Roger, and I had a drink with in the golf club and the rest of it. And he says, "Listen, would you do Tam O'Shanter? It was Burns supper." I said, "Aye, no bother." I can't remember who the speakers were, but so I did Tam O'Shanter. Then, of course, the next thing was, how would you like to join the Burns Club? I was a bit reluctant because I didn't really know what was involved in it. So he talked me around that bit. And then, of course, came the next stage. What to become on the committee? You need to become on the committee. Now, Jim, I had just come off the back of being in a golf club committee for about 13 years, doing match secretary, captain, vice captain. I really didn't want anything more to do with committees. But, of course, big safety. I said, right, okay, Roger, I'll get it. I'll do it. And then for there, of course, Roger, the procedure type is, next thing I can, I was the president, vice president, president. And then for there, you get the call to go to Irvine, which is a strange thing. You maybe know this, you'll first I know speaking about it, but I'm just sitting in my conservatory and reading my paper on a Sunday morning, and Iain Doe phones and says, "How would you like to be the vice president at Irvine Burns Club?" I says, "I'm not a member of Irvine Burns Club." "It doesn't work like that." I said, "It doesn't work like that. You come in as an honorary vice president elect, and you do the Burns supper, you do the Burns supper, you Toast to Scotland. Then you progress to the vice president, and you do a toast to Bonnie Jean, and then the next year when you're president, you do the mortal memory. So you start like as a journeyman, and then you go back to the vice. So you start, and then after that you become immediate past president and then a director. So it's not as if it's a lot of folk from the flair that goes on to be the president. Now, I mean, in a golf club, if you're asked to be vice captain or captain, then you can monitor and watch all the guys that's done before you. Well, you can't do that in Irvine Burns Club because I always saw Angus, and I was his vice president. So I always saw Angus, and he just tried to follow on the way that Angus did it. Who probably he did the same following on who was before him. So it's a strange stuff, couldn't it? But it works. it does seem to work. So there we
It
are.
does work, but and it also allows you to pick up on all the things that are, you know, with the Burns Club that comes along with being at Irvine. You know,
Yeah,
all the sort
yeah.
of stuff, they have all the traditions. You maybe want to maybe tell some of the viewers and
Well,
listeners.
the big thing is the museum, and I went to the museum for the first time. I mean, my God, I knew it was there, but I didn't know anything about it, what was in it or nothing. So I went with Colin and Burns Club. We did a tour first with Billy Kerr, which ran about Irvine Old Parish Graveyard, where you can do your Burns tour. Whoever we connected with Burns, who's buried in there. 11 of the 12 founder members at Irvine Burns Club are buried in that parish church, the graveyard. So we went and done that, and then we went and had a bite to eat in a beer, and then we went and done a tour of Wellwood. And I was absolutely gobsmacked at what I seen in there. And I thought, you know, honest to God, I'll not touch nothing. Just give me the key and let me in here. Let me rummage about in here. I'll just look through things. I'll note. But I knew I can get into it and I can read what's there and I see what's there. And the audio visual of Burns' time in Irvine is a great wee in the room, in the Burns room is great to see. And then the director's room, seeing the manuscripts and the books and the paintings and getting stories about them. And of course, tell people about the Burns Club and the past presidents, founder members. And I've kind of taken like a duck to water, and I like to do in there and sit and do that wee bit. And then we've up the stair in the music room. We have the story of Wellwood itself, how the Burns Club came to get it. And then the Clement Wilson room with loads and loads of artifacts in it. And of course, the original manuscripts are just something to behold. I remember we opened up the Twa Dugs and I let Big Hugh McHarg read it. I'm pretty sure I saw a tear in his eye when he was looking at the man's actual handwriting of these manuscripts of the Twa Dugs. It's an amazing place. This weekend we've got our doors open weekend, so there'll be 5 or 6 are sitting in there just waiting and hoping that somebody comes in to take them round Wellwood. I really can't emphasise enough the place that it is. And through that, I've learned more about Burns too, because as saying I was a reciter to start with, I did Tam O'Shanter, but it's through Irvine Burns Club that I've learned more about the life of Burns. And I've not had to learn it, I've just picked it up. So I could probably just do a cradle to grave as well about Burns' life. And a wee bit I'd always say, and I do my memory as well, that it's no it's not an adventurous life. It's no, how would I say, it's never going to be a blockbusting movie or a Netflix series or anything. It's never going to be like that, because, and I'm glad, because I tend to think the most important thing about Burns to me is his works. No, his life, it's his works. And I think anybody who was going to make a movie or a series of Burns would miss the point of that. I think they would go to the philandering and Hook Gandhi side. They would try to make a story out of that, because I don't see them making a story based on about his works. You know, so I'm quite glad they've never tried to make one of them, because I don't think they would paint a very good picture of him, the filmmakers. But I may be wrong. I may be judging before the time.
Well, he's certainly misguided in terms of sexual activity, but most of that's fiction as well.
Of course it is, but that would sell the movie, Jim. You know, that would sell the movie as the drunkard and all that. That's what would do it. Yeah, which is, you know, is totally wrong.
Obviously, listen to you. You're well versed. Have you got a favourite poem? Apart, leave Tam O'Shanter alone, because.
Well, I actually read your book in Tam O'Shanter in the flight and back to and from Spain last year. I read the wee book. I have it sitting here, because there's hundreds of books in the Burns Club. There's a lot. I try to find a link with Dumelton and Burns, being from Dumelton, and it's very difficult. But I found a couple. I can remember my dad, when I was a wee boy, going to Benwhat Burns Club, Burns suppers. Now, Benwhat was one of the villages up in the hills, and I remember him going to that, but didn't think nothing about it. So I've done a wee bit of kind of delving, and the church hall in Dumelton, which was originally the old parish church, it sits at the junction between Nowhead and Church Hill. And I never understood why it was called Church Hill, because it's a church hall that sits in Church Hill, no the church. but it was the then church. The church hall just now was the church built away back in the 18th century, and it was built by James Armour, Robert Burns' father-in-law.
Wow.
So that gave me a connection, some sort of connection with Burns and O'Melton. And I've looked and I've looked and I've looked for something else. And the only other one, and it's the vaguest ever, Douglas Graham, who you know real well who Douglas Graham is, was born in Douglaston Farm near Maidens. It doesn't exist at the time. And well, he's a character for Tam O'Shanter. And one of the local guys that he befriended round about there was a guy called William Sloan, who was also born in Douglaston, but whether at the farm or whether it be an area near Maidens, I don't know. And William Sloan, after the advice of Burns, his uncle, was employed by Burns as a godsman in Musgill, not for very long, and then he went back to Kirkcosroad where he had came from, and he was an apprentice shoemaker cobbler to Johnny Davison, who is Shooter Johnny. And the Dunmelton connection on the story of William Sloan is he eventually settled in Dunmellington. That's the only reference to it. He eventually settled in Dunmellington, and there are a load of Sloans in Dunmellington. So where they came from, William Sloan for Kirkcosroad, I don't know. So that's the kind of trying to find a connection. And the Doon, we tend to think of the Doon, or we call it the Din, Loch Doon, but the Din was the river. We tend to think it's Manivers, but it doesn't run through Dunmelton. It bypasses Dunmelton. It goes through Patna, and it goes through the back of Dalrymple on its way to Doon Foot. But we tend to think it is ours in Dunmelton, but it bypasses us by way of the Bolton Loch, and it meets the two tributaries about the same place, the Muck and the Manse, and goes on its way. So as Wayne's at school, we were always taught to sing "Ye Banks and Braes o' Bonnie Doon," which and I think the subject of the song, Margaret Kennedy, I'm sure she never ever was in Dunmelton, and I'm sure Burns was never on Dunmelton either. But he wrote the song based on Margaret Kennedy, who fell pregnant to an army officer, and she was left with an unborn child. And I love this song, but I hate to hear a man singing it and saying, "But he left the thorn with me." You can't leave a thorn. A thorn's an unborn child. So if even if you're a man, you got to sing it from the point of view of that young lady. So we can think of that as your song today, "Ye Banks and Braes." Beautiful, beautiful song. But a favourite poem, I don't know, Jim. I like a lot that I've not committed to memory. The ones in particular that I like that I haven't committed to memory are "Man is Made to Mourn," the inventory, or use me when you come to say the inventory. And the epistle to John McMath is the only recital of Burns I've ever heard that made the hairs in the back of my neck stand up. And it was Bobby McCallum at Auchinleck Talbot, Burns Supper, about 3 years ago. Well, what a rendition. So I wanted to learn that. I didn't learn that. I got waylaid and I learnt John Rankin instead. I read the epistle to John Rankin instead. But they're ones, and the epistle to a young friend as well, they're ones that I've not committed to memory, but I like to read. I think one of my favourite has got to be the one that thinks it's a kid's poem, "To a Mouse," and the story behind it as well, I think is great. I think that must be one of my favourites. But in all the poems, I think Burns was quite deliberately cryptic. Undoubtedly, in my mind, he was deliberately cryptic, that you had to look for the meaning in a lot of his stuff. See, if he'd been alive today, it could have been a crossword compiler for the Times or the Herald or something like that. And I find a lot of his stuff, you're going to look for the answers in it. And at the end of the epistle to the young friend, where he's giving advice to Andrew Aiken for his embarks on the world, and this was written in May 1786, before Burns was by any means famous or anything. In the end of the poem, he says, "In ploughman's phrase, God send you speed, still daily to grow wiser, and may you better reck the reed than ever the adviser." Now, reck the reed is to heed the advice of somebody. And Burns is saying than ever did the advisor, because he didn't reckon the read. He didn't take advice that should have done for other people, you know. So he's advising young Aitken to listen to what people are telling you. But he didn't just make that up. Burns took that out of Shakespeare. He took that for Hamlet. When Polonius was seeing his young boy Laertes away to the university, and the Shakespeare lines were like, "Reek not his own reed," which is the same thing. It means, do not as I do, but do as I say. Like, don't do as I did, but do as I say. And this is Burns telling him, don't do as I did. Listen to advice. And I think that was one of his biggest regrets as well, that he maybe didn't. What advice? I don't know, because no doubt with his brain power and his mind, he could have done anything other than a low lieutenant farmer. He could have carved out a career in medicine or architecture or anything, God forbid politics. He could have carved out a career in anything. And him himself, in the poem of the Vision, brings that to our attention. And there's a part in the middle of the poem of the Vision where he says, "All this motty misty climb I've backward mused and wasted time, when I've spent my youthful prime in doing naething but stringing blethers up in rhyme for fools to sing. Had I to give advice but hark it, by this I could have led a market, or strutted into a bank and clerk it, my cash account. Yet here, half mad, half fed, and half sarket, is all thy amount." So I think he was bitter against himself that he didn't do better for himself. Happy enough in life, I suppose, but I'm sure there wasn't much to be happy about in the days anyway. I mean, his humour is rather dry as well, and anything he did try to be humorous, sounding like Willie Wassel or all the rest of these things, or another Queen Artemisius and the Henpeck Squire, all these things. This is humour, but humour today wasn't like humour then. They hadn't enough a lot to laugh about, you know. So you wouldn't, those things you wouldn't find much humour in Burns's day. But to pin down a favourite poem, I think I would need to go. I would need to say Death and Dr. Hornby just for its satire. The Two of Mouse and Hornbook, they would be my favourite two. And the Two of Mouse, it's just it's how he came about. How he came about the wee mouse running away. I don't, when he was in the field ploughing it, and the guy on the ploughshare was a guy called John Blaine who cleaned the blades there, and instinctively John Blaine ran after the wee mouse. He got a frick. He was startled as much as the mouse was, and he ran after it with a paddle. And Burns says, whoa, John, we've caused it enough grief, just leave it. And he roomed with John Blaine in Musgill. And under the candlelight, he wrote the poem to a mouse, and he woke John Blaine and read the poem to him. He read out the poem to a mouse to John Blaine, who was, I'm not staying on the same, I don't think they're on the same bed, but in the same room, because Blaine was, he worked for them at Musgill. And that poem, and I'm particularly proud of the poem, particularly proud of the line in it, the best laid schemes of mice and men gang after gley, which starts, it was good enough for John Steinbeck to name the short story he wrote, which he was going to entitle Some Things That Happen. He changed that title to Of Mice and Men, because the best laid schemes of mice and men gang after gley. That's where Steinbeck took that title for. And there's another lesser known British made movie by Stephen Graham, you know, the guy who's the big star at the moment. He was in a wee movie where he befriended a big man of colour, as I need to call him now, who was a bit of a simpleton as well, but he was a street an illegal boxer, and he was his got a mentor and looked after him. And it's along the same lines as Lenny and George in Of Mice and Men. And that movie is called Best Laid Schemes. Mm-hmm. A very an unknown movie, but if you rumble about your fire sticks or your Googles or something, you'll find it. And it's the same story as Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men.
I remember reading Of Mice and Men at school, and It's one of the got me into Steinbeck. I've read all of Steinbeck's novels, but that was the one that kept coming back, and I read and I reread, and you know, I don't know whether it was the Burns connection that made it important to me, but I've always loved that book.
And 4 very good movies as well. 4 very good movies taken from the book. I think 2 were made for TV, and then a couple Hollywood made. Very, very good, and a simple tale.
Yeah,
a simple tale, which covers a lot of aspects of life. Yeah, so that's kind of leads my maybe to a moose as well, but definitely Dr. Hornbook as well is one of my favourites.
Oh, we've got you talking about Burns' works and your favourites and such like. You couldn't give us a couple of verses or a wee poem of your choice? I've kind of roughly got an idea what you might choose.
Well, I'll go away. I'll go away for them too. I'll go away for them too. And there's a wee poem called Another.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever heard of it. The wee kind of the background to it was, well, Burns was well read. He drew his influences from everywhere, from the Bible, from Shakespeare, from legend, from mythology. He drew all these influences, and he wrote a poem called Another, and it was based on. Well, everybody's aware of the mausoleum, Burns' mausoleum, and other mausoleums, but the first ever mausoleum in the world was built at Halicarnassus, which is now where Bodrum is, in Turkey, and it was built by the Queen Artemisia, in memory of her late husband. His name was Mausolus, hence mausoleum, and she was so devastated at his death that she had him cremated and his body turned to powder, which she put in alcohol and mixed with alcohol, and she drank him.
Yep.
The Burns has a non-comparison between this lady and a lady who lived in Nether Place, was between Musgill and Mauchline, when Burns stayed in Musgill. And the guy was William Campbell, was the guy's name. He's a subject of the Henpeck Squire, and his wife was Lilias Nielsen, and she was a brute, an ogre. The wee man had no life of a dog. And he wrote a wee poem, which kind of is a non-comparison between the two of them, and he called it Another. One Queen Artemisia, as old stories tell, when deprived of the husband that she loved so well, in respect of the love and affection he showed her, she reduced him to dust and drank of the pudder. But Queen Nether Place, of a different complexion, when called on to order the funeral direction, she would eat her dear lord, for no slender pretence, not for her love, but to save on expense. So that's his idea of humour at the time, and then he drew it for there, and it's all these wee things you find in his poems, and the epistle to John Rankin. Oh, rough road ready, witted Rankin, the wheel of cocks for fun and drinking. There many godly folk are thinking your dreams and tricks will send you Cora like a sinking, stracht to old nicks. Now, reading that, I've got to think, who's Cora? We'll send you Cora like and sinking, stracht to old nicks. I says, right, okay, that's somebody getting sent to hell, but who is this Cora? Cora, Kora, was actually a cousin of Moses and Aaron who dissented, and he taken a kind of a rebellion. He rebelled against them because he wanted everybody, all the Israelites, to be in the priesthood, etc. But it was only the special through that God had picked. And Korah, because of his rebellion against Moses, apparently in the Bible, in the book of Numbers, God had opened the earth up and swallowed Korah and all his followers down to hell. You could just read by that and no care about who Korah is. No, I need to find out who that is. In John Rankin, that's also a good poem as well, where he touches on two subjects. Where he used to befriend John McMath, who, as you know, he had a wee problem with the drink, John McMath. And being a kind of understudy to Woodrow, Dr. Woodrow in Terbolton, he couldn't very well walk into the pub, get a pint. So he would go out to Rankin's, out to Adams Hill, and he'd give him some drink, some wine or whatever, and give him a wee drink. But the clergy, they heard about this, and they went out to give him a rollicking. Well, of course, Rankin get them through. He get the clergy through and put them in the back of a horse and cart and sent them into Terbolton for all the townsfolk to see. And that's one bit of the story in the poem. And the other bit in the poem is when Rankin teased him over the baby that Elizabeth Peyton was carrying, and teased him that he was the father. And in it, the reply to it, Burns says to Rankin, "It was ye, Nick, lately in my fun, I went a roving with my gun, and I brought a patriot to the gun, a bonny hen, and as a twilight had begun, I thought nane would ken. But some old hand had ta'en a note that the sick hen had gotten shot, and I suspected of the plot. I scorned to lee. I'll give the girl my goat, I'll pay the fee." So he's admitting that he is the father of the child, and he likens shooting a patriot to impregnating Elizabeth Peyton. So he sends that back to John Rankin, who he was very fond of. He was a roaster, Rankin, that the Burns couldn't get the better of. Your local prancer in the pub that you all know, you're never going to get better of. So that's a particular like that as well. But I would have to go back and say it was To a Mouse just for and Hornbook. Yeah.
You talked earlier on about Irvin Burns Club and the museum at Wellwood, and but Irvin Burns Club also has loads of connections within the community in Irvin and various societies. Can you tell us a wee bit about that kind of stuff?
Aye, we in Irvin you have what they call a kirking, where like the president of the Burns Club goes to our kirking. So he will go with the incoming president will go there, and he'll do the church reading, and all the directors will go with him. But also there will be representatives from the Carters Society. They'll sit. It's up the stairs in the church. The Carter Society will sit in one bit, and the Irvin Trades, they will sit in another area, and then the provost and the council sit in another area. So the four are sort of linked. So if there's a kirking for the new deacon convener of the trades, then we all go to it as well. If there's a kirking for the captain of the Carters, then all the organisations all go to that as well. And same with the Burns Club, and the council are always invited. And the same happens at the Memorial Sunday in November. We all take the places up the stair in the church, and there's a wee parade for the town's house goes round to there. And of course, we're involved in the Mirimis celebrations where the president goes with all other to chain gang, for want of a better word, and go to the tent of the Mirimis, or go to the moor, and have a day's entertainment there, and get to the Carter's lunch. So it's all tied in, and we also host the Mirimis week. We have the doors open for anybody to come in, and then we have the captain of the Carters and the four Marys in. They come in and do a visit of Wellwood. We've actually started giving a lot of books away now. We've got so many books, especially to kids and visitors. They go away with a Burns book with an inscription. It's probably not a book of Burns poems. It's sort of a biography. And as you both will know, sorry, my nose is up at it. As you both will know, Burns's biographies are very, very heavy.
Yes,
very heavy. And the one John Mackay's gets slated a wee bit, but I like John Mackay's book as a reference. I'm not saying I could sit and read it bit by bit, but I read quite a bit of Iain McIntyre's book, which was easier reading. And there was one written by a minister in Terbolton, I forget his name, Higgins. And it was written in 1892, and that's probably the easiest to read, but the print's that small. Because every page has got a reference to something else that you've got to look up. Because somebody, they tell you who said that, where this story came from, and things like that. And so that they are a hard read. I'm not going to say they're no, they are a hard read. But we have got there's plenty of them in Wellwood anyway. And but it was the club is, as I say, next year it's bicentenary, and we're doing a project at the moment that we're going to try and blue plaque Everton Old Parish Church graveyard
Right.
with the 11 founder members, and also the first president, Dr. John Mackenzie, funny enough, Douglas, who he was actually Burns' father's doctor when he lived in Lochley, and he
Right.
moved up with the Earl of Eglinton to be his medical officer up here, and he was the first in 1826. He was the first president of Everton Burns Club, and he's the only one that's no buried in the graveyard. He was buried in Edinburgh. And the first vice president was none other than Davy Silla, Dainty Dave, who never attained presidency. We don't know why. We really don't know why, but he wasn't. He never made president. So we're going to blue plaque the 11 of those. Blue plaque, a blue plaque on the Patterson family, who came from Wellwood. The area, you know where the area of Wellwood is? It's actually between Saun and Muirkirk. There's a wee bit there where there's about 3 or 4 farms called Wellwood.
Yeah.
And it was a Covenanters area at the time. And these are the people who bequeathed the Pattersons from Wellwood. They bequeathed Wellwood building to Everton Burns Club. Fantastic story. Just to be there, they're a building. It's a beautiful building.
Yeah.
So
I didn't know the connection with the Wellwood at Muirkirk. I mean, I knew the name was the same, but I didn't realise there was a connection.
Well, yeah, that's the part of that thing. That's where they came from. They came from that area, aye.
Mm-hmm.
And they would call it after the area they came from, the Patterson.
Yeah.
And then who else? I think the minister at the time, John Richmond, would also get one, and the a guy called Alexander Campbell, who was a minister in Irvine, and he was the guy who got a hold of the original manuscripts, the original manuscripts for the first edition that we have, through a boy called Hamilton Robertson, who was a lawyer's apprentice to Gavin Hamilton. So Gavin Hamilton gave these original, they're written on both sides in his own handwriting. He gave these to Hamilton Robertson as a wedding present. Now, Burns was an unknown. I'm pretty sure I'd rather had a bale of towels than 15 bits of paper scribbled on. But they found their way to Irvine through his Hamilton Robertson's widow, who later married Alexander Campbell, and he through one of the founder members, a guy called Patrick Blair, gave them to the Burns Club, and that's the reason we've got those. That's
fantastic. Some great history, great stories.
Absolutely, yeah.
And when you were talking about visitors to the museum, if somebody was visiting Irvine, this is for the benefit of our viewers, somebody visiting Irvine, how would they go about arranging to come and see the museum?
Go online and book a time online, and the admin will see it and they'll correspond with you. And there are open days. This weekend's an open day.
Yeah. So if somebody's booking online, is it just Everton Burns Club?
Wellwood Museum and Everton Burns Club, yeah.
Right, okay. That's pretty good. And you've also got the John Galt connection.
Yeah, I know. It's again, I'm no big in Galt, because I'd never really heard much of Galt either, you know. Other than again, his book. If you try to read Thomas Hardy, then that's what John Galt will be like, I'd imagine.
I tried Annals of the Parish at one stage and struggled a wee bit with it.
Which is based in Dreghorn. And Dulmailing, I believe, is the name of the village, isn't it? Dulmailing. Yeah. There's a Dulmailing Avenue in Dreghorn, and that's obviously what it's called after. I've never tried any. I tried Thomas Hardy, and I imagine it'll be the same, written at the same time. Yeah. So there's a connection there with John Galt as well.
Yeah. I loved your description of the museum and such like, and how once you'd been with did you say with the Kilbirnie Burns Club or
Kilwinning
Burns Club? Once you'd been, you were hooked, and I have to say the same thing happened to me. way back, I don't know, it must be about 40 years ago now. I had really no interest in Burns and was persuaded to go on a trip that Newcomer Burns Club were taking to Irvine. And I just got hooked, got completely hooked. And the thing that I remember most was we did the tour of the museum, which was fascinating. And then we went into, do you call it the director's room, where the big table is? And they found a few drams in a cupboard, the sort of bottles with a wee bit at the bottom of the bottle left for a dram for everybody. And folks started talking about Burns as if he was there. And I was just absolutely fascinated. And it was just such a great memory. But the other thing that fascinated me that you've not mentioned is the fact that you've got so many honorary members who have either accepted or not accepted that honour in their own handwriting. And you maybe tell us a wee bit about that.
Yeah, that's a particular favourite area of mine as well. I would like to dedicate a room to the honorary members, to be honest. It's maybe something we can think about at time without jumping the gun, and we have plenty of pop-up banners with maybe famous Scotsmen, famous authors, famous sportsmen, and all these. But the amount of them that there are, and the letters, you know, I've seen as many people spending more time going through the letters of these honorary members than any other aspect of the museum. Everybody wants to see Sean Connery's letter as an honorary member, you know. And when you have Thackeray, Charles Dickens, you've Henry Kissinger, every prime minister, honorary members. There's a few have maybe, I might say knock it back. I think they're just a correspondence that got lost in the post. Two that spring to mind is Robert Louis Stevenson and Sir Walter Scott, because it is minuted. The received letters, but we don't have those letters. But there was at that time, around about 1828, there was a conflict of secretaries, and we think that these letters have been kept to the secretary, and they'll be in a lawyer's office somewhere else. It was I think it was a lawyer for Bede that was to do with it at that time as well. So we think we've lost some of them, but there's correspondence to them. And the way it works is every outgoing president gets to choose 3 or 4 honorary members. And a couple of years ago, I remember Rose Riley, the footballer, and she was over the moon at getting this getting honour. She came to the Burns Club to collect it, but that's always a big bonus if there's somebody can come. And I do realise all the famous people that asked they can't make it, and Murray Pittock for Glasgow University was there at the same time. So it was my turn to pick them this year, and I had picked a guy called Matthew Fitt. He's a Scottish language author, a very nice guy. He came and visited us and was coming to the Sunday afternoon to get presented, but unfortunately he lives between Dundee and Prague, and he had fell off a ladder and actually done a very, very serious injury, so he didn't get to it. And the other one who couldn't attend was that hotel, the rower,
right?
Kathleen Granger,
the
Olympic rower, and she couldn't attend either. But for Charlie, 2 of my honorary members were actually there. They were actually at our annual celebration the night before, and then the next day they came to get their honorary membership. And one was a friend of mine, a Dumelton man called Donald Reid. You know Donald?
Yeah, no Donald.
I hear Jim laughing there. So I was at a funeral with him the day. So I gave Donald, I made Donald an honorary member, and he came out and was delighted. He went to the night before. He went to the annual celebrations, we call it, the supper, and he came the next day and he got a wee speech. He done the rest. He was delighted, over the moon at getting honorary membership. It was really blue for him. And then the other one, I said, I'll just go closer to home. There's an oncologist, very clever oncologist. I had suffered myself through prostate cancer. So I knew, it was like 17 years ago, so I knew all about this. And this is a very, very clever guy who's an oncologist over in Kingston General Hospital over in Ontario. If you look at his podcasts and these things he does on the internet, and his name is Dr. McPhail Leverage, and I had made him an honorary member, and he was at the second annual. He came over and went to annual celebration, and came the next day to pick up his honorary membership.
Fantastic.
But there's a twist in the tale because Dr. McPhail Leverage is actually my sister's boy. And he's away with his tie and away with his pin and away reading buns and loving it.
Keeping it in the family.
Aye, that's right. I said, well, why no? He said,
absolutely.
Well, Jim, I was in Canada about 3-4 weeks ago, and I was with him. I was with him in a wee pub crawl around about Kingston.
Jim, we're down to about 5 minutes. Have we anything in particular we want to ask Iain, or are we? I think we've had a really great chat and thoroughly enjoyed Iain's stories.
Yeah, so have I. And to mention Donald as well makes my night. Donald and I go back a long way.
I know.
But one thing we haven't talked about, and just maybe to conclude it all, what about a song or two? Do you like the odd Burns song?
Aye, I do. I don't mind. Aye. I don't have a great singing voice. I'm all right in a karaoke. I'm not so good with Burns. But funny enough, last year it was in the Bachelors Club, and it's a wee Bachelors Club kind of supper. Angus was chairing it, and a guy called Jim Spears was doing the motto memory, and people just turn up when they do things. So I had done the bit of Two Moose with the story. The wee actual story before I say is longer than the poem, so it keeps you going for a wee while. And then so many folk were doing this and doing it, and the guy went up and done a dream. Now that lasts forever, a dream. And I had to go back up. I says, well, maybe he says, Angus says, no. He says, no, sing. I says, sing. I says, Alan Beck has just sung, and Polly has just sung.
Oh, no.
First class. He wanted me to sing. And I sung You Vanish and Breeze, and Alan Beck came out and congratulated me. And I'd have a half a bottle of whiskey in with this, I'm right enough. Imagine asking somebody to sing after them.
No, that's no fair, because I love Polly to bits. In fact,
Which is some singer, by the way.
On Saturday night there, at the conference for the Burns Association, she come over and gave me a cuddle as always, because I always try and get her to sing a couple of songs, and we just didn't have time for her at the weekend there. But both Alan and her are really absolutely terrific singers, but Polly's just a lovely lady as well.
Absolutely, aye. And then the bold Angus, aye, you use a song. So them sing. So I thought I had a couple of halves in me, so I did it, but it wasn't that good. I think they were quite generous with their
Angus was in good form he was doing the auction at the Federation.
Oh, I was really a year before, aye.
And he sold a bottle of whiskey for about £700 or something.
I nearly bought something. But there was Americans there last year. I was going, is this kind of a book thing? I said, they're paying about £200-300 for this. I can't remember what it was, and I'm saying, I'm going to bid for that. I want that. But no, I couldn't go with the Yanks. No. A wee thing about the museum, it's great to see folk in the museum that really love it. And I see a bit during the summer there. I took wee Dubby Fleeman and Jim Morrison into it. Well, you'd have thought Dubby had died and gone to heaven. Dubby fucking let him and me Jim come in, and they loved it. They were there. They could have spent the full day in it. And we take the kids room. It's a different tour. There's a bit of a kids tour. And then, of course, we have the kids recital competitions, which again, Jim, you and I did it last year. I love that. I love watching the kids, and especially at the age that we judged, because they're putting their heart and soul into it.
Yes.
The younger ones aren't particularly caring. They're there for a laugh and they'll do their wee bit. And see the older ones, maybe going into secondary, they're kind of falling off the edge. They're maybe not so much press gang, but they're doing it because they've always done it. But the age group that we judged, they put everything into it, and they're so emotional, and they would break your heart because they're greeting when they don't win.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the hardest. It's the best to listen to, but it's the hardest to judge.
Oh, it's not easy judging kids at all. Not easy.
No. And just a wee aside at the end there. I met you, Douglas. I was doing it. Were you doing a debate at the debate at Newcomnott this year?
Oh yes, aye.
Well, funny enough, the debate was Burns was an atheist, and it was the boys for Kirkcudbright to fight that corner, and the other fighting the corner that he was an atheist was myself and Derek Murdoch. Now, Derek is we couldn't argue the other pair. Derek is a church elder, and that morning I done the reading in the church, so I don't think we can argue the other side. It's a fair dues to the boys for putting up an argument.
That's the whole point of that debate. That it's the power of the argument that matters.
It was most enjoyable. I'd like to go and watch it this year. I'll certainly
be very welcome. And listen, we've come to the end, and it's been fantastic to listen to your knowledge of Burns, to listen to your life story, and just to get chatting with you. You made things easy for Jim and I. So we just want to say thanks very much for telling us about your life with Robert Burns.
Thank you
very much, Jim and Douglas, and I thoroughly enjoyed it as well.